Okay, so number 12. The gravitational field oops, let me undo that slightly. Of a planet is the space around it where other objects, and I'll put in brackets there, masses are attracted to it. Now, I'm using objects just now because we haven't yet defined what we mean by mass. Okay. So weight is the force right, is the force of gravity acting on an object and pulling it towards the nearest planet. Now, it could be towards a star or an asteroid as well, etc., but we'll just go with planets for now. And because it's a force, it is measured in newtons, capital N. And lastly, and because it's a force from the nearest planet, it will change throughout the universe, depending on the nearest planet, star, asteroid, whatever. So 14, we say that mass is the amount of matter in an object. It is measured in kilograms, kg, and it does not depend on where the object is in the universe. Okay, so 15 introduces a formula that we discovered. Okay, so the formula is W equals M times 10. And when I introduce a formula, I like to put it in a wee box that will stand out in your notes or highlight it in some way. And underneath, we always define what the symbols stand for. So just what we've been saying. Weight is measured in newtons. And mass has got to be in kg, so even if a question gives you it in grams, you would need to put it into kg. But then what I'm going to do is a couple of examples for how I would, how you would do the questions. So I'll just make up some example questions. In fact, I'll base it on the one that we did. Calculate Mr. Clucky's weight.
So is that the actual formula if you do
Yes.
it with someone else?
Yes, so copy the example. You don't normally, when you're doing examples from the booklet, you wouldn't normally copy the example, but right, for this bit you will need to. So calculate Mr. Clucky's weight. His mass is 70 kilograms. And what I want you to do is to get used to this way of working. Right, it's very important. I want it to become a kind of habit. Do you know when they changed the number code? I know a lot of you are quite new to the school anyway, but for those of you who weren't, you probably knew the number code previously without thinking. You just kind of went up and put it in, and then they changed it, and you're like, oh, I've got to think about it again. What we want is certain things to become a habit, that you do it without thinking about. So I want this way of laying out your working to become a habit. So you might think, oh, these questions to start with are quite simple. I don't really need to do that. What I want you to do is to get a habit so that when it gets to the harder questions, you've got good habits. Rather than when it gets to the harder questions, thinking about what was that habit that he wanted us to develop? Why are you actually having to think about a difficult question as well? Right? So free up your brain to do some things automatically without thinking about it, so that you've got as much as possible. Not yet. Okay, because I want to show you how to do it. So you've got as much brain power as possible to concentrate, right, on thinking about the problem. And the first thing we'll do in any problem is go through the problem and write down any information that you're given in the question. So the only information I'm given in this question is that my mass is 70 kilograms. So I write down M equals 70 kg. Right, it's called analysing the question. And then carefully write out, what is the question actually asking me? Now usually that is obvious, and you might think it's a waste of time, but sometimes it's a key to getting a more difficult problem. So I'm simply going to put W equals question mark. Okay? And then over beside it, once I've listed my variables, I write out the formula which links the two things together. So the link between W and M is W is equal to M times 10. Right? And that gets you a mark for writing that out. The second mark is for what we call substitution, which means going through the formula one bit at a time and saying, do I know that? And if you do know it, you replace the letter by the number. Okay? So the first letter I come to in the formula is a W. I don't know what W is, so I'll leave it as W. I don't put in a question mark, because then it's easy to lose track of what it is you're trying to work out. So underneath, right, the previous W, I put another W, because I don't know its value. But I do know the value of M. So instead of writing M, I write 70, because I know that M is 70 in this example. And then I copy the times 10 bit that came after it. Does that all make sense? You see what I'm doing with that formula? Do the actual calculation, 70 times 10. Not that you need a calculator to do that one, I'm sure. The answer is 700, and we need to fill in that it's N for newtons. And here's a good habit, underline your final answer. So example 2. What we're doing is going to reverse it now. Calculate the mass of a folder that weighs 3.5 newtons. So I do the exact same idea as I did above. I go through the question and say, well, what does it tell me in the question? And the first thing it tells me is this, is it weighs 3.5 newtons. So I write down W equals 3.5 N. What does it ask me? It asks me the mass. Can I remind you once again, it's a capital W, but a small m. And then what we do is, rather than learning a new formula for working out the mass, we just use the same formula again. Now, formulas are given to you in tests and stuff like that, so it's okay when you're doing homework to look them up as well. So the formula we get is W equals M times 10 again. We then do what's called the substitution again, which means we go through the formula, and if we know the value, we replace it with a number. So W we know has a value of 3.5, so we put that in. So we've substituted 3.5 for W. We don't know what M is, so we'll leave it as an M. If we put a question mark, it can be easy to lose track of what it is you're trying to work out. And then we complete the times 10 part of the formula. So that's called substitution, replacing the letters by the values where you know them.
And then we write the answer.
Now, some of you might be immediately to go straight to the answer. I'm going to put in all the steps of the working, right? Because when you get to harder numbers, you might want these steps in as well, right? So the basic steps of working are, well, M is on the right-hand side, so I'm going to swap round both sides of the formula. I'm not changing anything there, just reversing the order. So the M times 10 that was on the right-hand side goes to the left. The 3.5 on the left goes to the right. Now I can try and solve for M. I know that M times 10 is 3.5, but I just want to know what M is on its own. So I need to get rid of that times 10. What is the opposite of multiplying by 10? Dividing by 10. So I have to divide both sides by 10. Whatever I do to one side of a formula, I've got to do to the other. And I've just about run out of space at the bottom of this page, unfortunately. The M times 10 divided by 10 on the left-hand side just gives me M. And then on the right-hand side, I get my calculator out, because you're always allowed to do it in physics. I'm going to have to write this over here because I'm running out of space. But the final answer is 3.35, and the units are kg.